Hello and welcome back to the Fullerton College Pre-Press class. This is Professor Ben Hewitt, and today we're going to take a look at the PIA Pre-Press Training Manual, Task 5, Module 3. We're talking about press considerations. What do you need to be aware of in the printing process about how the press operates itself that's going to affect your designs, your layouts, and your projects as they go through from planning to real life? They'd like us to learn about gripper marks and side guides, be able to find them on a press sheet, understand what a press unit does. Hint, it puts down ink. Sorry, I can't help myself, but get ahead of myself. We'll look about how the plates work, how they're mounted, what plate bed is, and then talk about web-fed presses and how they have cutoff and different types of imposition available to sheet fed. This will probably take about 2 videos, maybe 3. Let's hope for 2. So last time we did talk about the 2 main types of presses, sheet fed and web fed. Remember that sheet fed presses like big sheets of paper, maybe not big, pre-cut individual sheets in stacks, and it takes a sheet at a time and puts it through the press. Web presses run on a web, which is a way of saying a roll. Again, the thing to think of, and if you need to explain it to people, just everyone knows what toilet paper looks like. Explain them it's like a roll of toilet paper, but obviously better paper than that, mostly. And it runs through the press and it goes onto another roll on the other side. We talked a little bit about bleed areas. Remember that bleed is now a part of your life. Congratulations. You will now spend the rest of your life explaining to friends, family, and clients, in no particular order, of course, what bleed is and why they should be using it. And we also talked about the gripper fingers that hold the paper on a sheet fed press and pull it through, and how you can't print where the gripper fingers are. There's a bit more to learn though. That was just the beginning. Now we're going to jump a little bit farther in and look at the next level of what the press does. On a sheet fed press, there's something called a side guide. I was going a little bit Sean Connery there, the side guide. Yes, where's Money Penny? Anyways, that's a very bad Sean Connery. I don't really do him. But anyways, the side guide. This is a way of making sure that we're printing to the same place. One of the things that's very important in printing is getting things to line up correctly. And the best way to line things up correctly is to choose a reference point and keep it the same. The side guide is a reference point on the printed page that's always going to be the same side. That way, everything that's measured is measured from the same point, and any variations in paper size, which, by the way, happen while you are printing, even if you cut them identically, the paper can expand and contract as it gets water on it from the wet presses. As it dries a little bit, it'll contract and get a little bit smaller, depending on the weather and depending on what day and time of day you print it and how warm it is in the room. Your paper will change size. Not significantly, but our tolerances are so tight that even those smallest little things can make a difference. The best way to account for that is to always use the same reference point. If you start measuring from 2 opposite sides of the paper, as long as the paper never changes size, that can work. But once you start getting even the tiniest bit of variation, and believe me, it happens pretty quick, you need to make sure you're measuring from the same side, because otherwise your measurements are going to be off by 1/100th of an inch. I know that sounds really, really nitpicky, but this is a really, really nitpicky type industry. Our tolerances are in sometimes quite a bit tighter than even aerospace's tolerances for manufacture. Don't tell them I said that. Anyways, this spot, or there is a excuse me, as the paper goes through the press, there is a device, a side guide, it's sometimes called in the press, that makes sure that it lines the paper to the same side as it goes through, to make sure every sheet is printed in the exact same place. We talked about this a little bit before, but I'll mention it again. As the overall goals for printing, while we like accuracy, it is far more important to be consistent. It's better to have 1,000 sheets that are a little tiny bit wrong, but wrong in the same way, than to have 1,000 sheets where one is perfect and the others are all off in other directions. You can't work with that. Consistency is the most important aspect that we are aiming for. That's our outcome. We want to make sure we get the same predictable results over and over and over again. Even if it's just shy of perfect, you want to make sure that we're getting the same just shy of perfect rather than getting perfect sometimes. So side guides, there are a couple different things on the presses. Here's a picture of one. They can be mechanical devices that move in and out and tap the paper and massage the stack to make sure it's the same, or it can honestly just be like a fence, like a metal wall that you put next to the paper and lock into place. And that can be a side guide. It can just be something that you push the paper up against. Anyways, depending on the press, the side guide will change based off the feed systems. Anyways, no matter how it works in the press, whether it's a tapper or just a static, you pile it up as clean as you can as the human operator and then tell it to go and it just rests against an edge. Either way, you got to make sure we maintain a consistent distance from the edge by always using the same side guide of the same side of the paper towards that side guide, known as the side or the guide side. The guide side touches the side guide. That was fun to say, and I had to practice it a few times, to be honest. Anyways, so there's two side guides, but only one is considered, or one is used at a time, depending if you're lining it up to the right or to the left. You can move them in or out of position as you need to. Just remember that the side of the paper that goes against the side guide on the press is the guide side. The guide side touches the side guide, and the side guide touches the guide side. Anyways, the press operator checks the position, and there's also a side mark that gets printed. I told you before you can't consistently print to the edge of a page, and that's true for artwork, but it wasn't all the way true. Let me Obi-Wan for you here and invoke what I told you was true from a certain point of view. There is a mark that gets printed on the edge of the pages on an offset press that's sheet fed. It's a side guide mark. It's just a little tiny hairline. It's like a point, 1 point thick. And a point is an actual real measurement. In case you're just joining us, having gone through our measurement stuff, a point is not some sort of computer measurement. When you're talking about font sizes and line thicknesses, points are not based off of pixels at all. A point is actually 1/72 of an inch. 72 points makes an inch. Anyways, so a point is an actual physical size based off of inches. We'll go into that another time, and sometimes we already have, so that's a point. Anyways, maybe 1 point, maybe even a half a point thick. And it prints exactly on the edge so that half the line is printed and half the line is not. That way, as you can see in the picture here, when you look at the stack, you can tell quickly from a printout if the side guide was consistent or not. That tells you, one, if you're using the right side of the page, but also you can see if it prints in a little bit, that lets you know that if you see on the edge near the bottom of the stack, the kind of black line on the edge goes away, that means that it wasn't printing on the edge. It was either printing too far into the paper or too far off of it where that mark was. So the goal is to get that mark to land exactly on the edge, cut in half by the edge of the paper. Gripper and guide. Every time you pass through, there's a gripper side and a guide side. The gripper edge is the edge that those little gripper hands grab, and the side edge, or the guide side, is the side that touches the side guide. Sometimes you'll mark those with X's on an actual press. So take a big fat black marker or whatever you have. Typically it's black. And you mark 3 X's on the gripper and 2 on the guide side. And that lets feeders know this is the side it was printed from. This is also important to finishers. People who are cutting it down at the end, they also need to know which side was which, because they should also be measuring from the side guide side, the guide side. That the guide edge is your guiding edge. That is for everything, for printing, but also for cutting and registering other things like embossing and die cutting. Anything you're doing as a finishing project should use the same reference point, because that is the only consistent place you've been measuring from. If you measure from the opposite edge for the next process, you're going to get inaccurate cuts, and we don't want that. That's a waste of good printing. And I already talked about this. Got ahead of myself. Press units. A press unit is, in a way, its own printing press. A 4-color press, the standard of modern printing, that prints 4-color, F-O-U-R, can print full color, F-U-L-L, photos and print jobs. You can match any color within the CMYK color space. But it's not a single press. In a way, it's actually 4 printing presses stuck end to end to end, daisy chained on. You can have presses with more than 4 units. We'll talk about that too. Each unit is kind of its own printing press. Each unit has everything you need to print 1 color of ink at a time. It has cylinders to mount plates. The blanket cylinder has an impression cylinder to push back against it. It has all the rollers and all the rollers for an inking system and a dampening system. The feed system is the one thing that's consistent throughout the whole press. They all share one common feed system, one conveyor belt, one section of chains and grippers that pulls the paper through all 4 stations. Look at me, assuming it's a 4-color press. It is in my picture. They can be more, they can be less. It's still possible to find 1 and 2 color presses out there. 1 color presses are pretty rare because they've been mostly replaced by Xerox copiers. Sorry, 1 color. 2 color presses still exist as well. Sometimes they're just presses people haven't gotten rid of. And it is possible, by the way, not just theoretically, but I've seen it done. When I started teaching here, there was a real slick student who did the most incredible print job ever of printing a full 4-color print job on a 1-color press by running it, letting it dry, and running it again 3 more times, every time setting up the press to run a different color of ink. And that is 100% legit. It's just not efficient at all. It is also very difficult. Isao was about the most competent offset pressman I've ever met. I've never seen anyone pull that off so well. Now, the image he chose had a little bit of JPEGery to it, but I'm in pre-press, so I have different gripes than the press operators do. This press operation was outstanding. But anyways, those things still do exist, but for the most part, most presses print 4 colors or more. It's called process color, and it's the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black CMYK color space that we all know and love. And if we don't worry, I'll introduce you. You'll know it and love it by the end of this class. There is, however, extra color beyond what you can do. A gamut is a way of saying what you're able to print and what you're not able to print. Things within your gamut are things you can do. Things outside your gamut are things you cannot do. Spot color typically helps you take care of things outside your gamut. Spot color means, in addition to the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black press units on your press that print the aforementioned colors, the spot color would be an extra unit, a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th press unit on that big press, and that prints a separate color of ink that's outside the process color system. It's for things like corporate branding colors. The most obvious one that I'm sure you're tired of people talking about is Coca-Cola and their unique red color that's on their cans and their boxes and their trucks and their t-shirts and their cabana umbrellas at the beach. All their merch, all their packaging, all their product have the exact same red. Asterisk. There's some details to that, how they pull it off. But anyways, it is a spot color. There's no way of mixing Coca-Cola red exactly correctly by mixing magenta and yellow to try and get that red. The only way to get it exactly right is to actually open up a can of Coca-Cola red and put it into your press on its own unit that prints only that red color. Same goes for sports team colors, corporate colors, anything you want to have that's specific, metallics, fluorescents, UV coatings that are spot glossy. Those are all done with an extra press unit that prints that color, or if it's UV, that clear varnish can print on its own press unit. So 5 and 6 is actually rather common now, but more press units means a higher hourly press rate. Why is that? Well, I'm glad you asked. That's because more press units means more people and more time to operate it. If it's more people, you're paying for the people's time to work on it. If it's more time for the same person operating all 6 units by themselves, that lucky person, I really don't envy them. That's a lot of work. That means that they're being paid. Their time is going to take longer because now they're making 5 or 6 plates instead of only 4. Anyways, spot color costs more because it takes more materials and more time, which makes a higher hourly press rate. We're going to pause here and come back in our next video to talk about the printing plate and how it works. Let's go back to spot color. We'll end here on spot color. Spot color costs more, but is more accurate for matching specific colors. I must say that in my experience, I have very rarely actually gotten to do it. Most of the time, it's actually a very valuable negotiating tool with picky clients who will sit there all day and argue about how that color isn't quite blue enough and it doesn't pop enough. And we really want that blue to be perfect and it's not. Therefore, we need a discount. The counter argument from the printer side is the color you are asking for is literally physically impossible to create using process color, but we can mix a special can of ink to make the exact blue you're looking for, and it costs so and such much. In which case, almost every time the customer says and has said to me, you know what, actually that process color you mixed is pretty close and I think I like it.